Welcome everyone. My name is Bryant Stone. I am the host for today's presentation. I have been brought on by MyFed University. As you guys can see, the title is called Legacy and Retirement Planning Made Simple. I'm going to give it about 1 minute. I see that the attendees are hopping on by the second. So I'm going to give it about 1 second here, about a minute or two, and we'll get this presentation started. Thank you. Alrighty, everyone. Once again, my name is Bryant Stone. I have been brought on today by MyFed University to conduct today's presentation. Once again, it is called Legacy and Retirement Planning Made Simple. MyFed University does conduct these webinars typically about 5 to 6 times per year. I've had the ability to speak on these, I want to say once or twice this year. So it's definitely an honor, and I'm hoping today that you'll get something out of the presentation. We do have a chat box open, so if you guys do have any questions, and we do have some time before the end of today's presentation, I will try to get to some of those questions. We are scheduled for an hour, so I'm going to try to finish the presentation before then to respect your time. So let's get started here. All right, so MyFed University is a government registered contractor. Their DUNS number is right up there. And as you can see there, as a civil servant, it's your right to have a financial plan tailored to match your needs to ensure you have control of your federal benefits and investments. You'll need access to the latest financial and federal resources available. By integrating investment knowledge with your specific financial needs, you can develop a sound financial plan for retirement. So MyFed University was initially developed as an educational company for federal employees to give you guys the knowledge, the education from different professionals in all different areas and walks of life, so that way you guys can have the resources that you need to make intelligent decisions with your federal benefits, and then also transitioning your federal benefits into retirement. We're going to talk about a lot of that stuff today, and as you can see, you know, they are a government registered contractor. I think it's important with these different presentations and any presentation that I'm asked to hop on. I just did one for NASA a few weeks ago. And similarly, as I tell those employees, I know that they're a part of, obviously, your government system, and we'll probably have a few people from NASA on today. But I think it's important to understand and know who the speaker is. So I was born and raised in Norwich, Connecticut. I went to Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania. I had the ability and I had the luck to excel in football as a youth, which landed me a scholarship to play for Bloomsburg University. And I always like to joke with people and say that I went to Bloomsburg to play football, and I happened to get a degree at the same time. You guys can probably see some of the accolades in the back there, but after I finished college with my business degree, I ended up getting into the mortgage financing industry. Quickly learned that that was not for me, and then in 2008, I started in the financial services industry. I started my own practice in 2009. Currently, I serve as the Chief Investment Officer of Top Rank Advisors, LLC. We're based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And as you guys can see, as an investment advisor, you know, I take a holistic approach to all my clients' situations. And a disclaimer here, we are required to read this. So as a network representative of MyFed University, I'm trained and authorized to conduct educational workshops in the federal benefits area. We are licensed insurance professionals in the state and specialize in pre-retirement and retirement income planning. We are not attorneys or CPAs. We cannot and will not give any legal or tax advice on this call today. Any mentioning of taxes represents general tax information and is used for example purposes only. Some information and opinions included in this presentation have been provided by third parties and have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable. However, accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by the presenter. or his or her company. It is being provided for information purposes only and is not a solicitation for the purchase of any product, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of the client. Any investment advisory services are offered through Red Hawk Wealth Advisors, an SEC registered investment advisor. Some investment advisor representatives of Red Hawk may market their advisory services under the name of Top Rank Advisors, an unaffiliated and separate legal entity. So now that all that disclaimers and disclosures are out the way, let's get started here. At the end of the presentation today, you guys will get a survey to fill out. We do highly urge that you guys do fill out that survey. And that survey really helps me as a presenter. It helps my Fed University to see if the topics that they are presenting, the content that we are presenting is valuable and it is informational. If it's not, please let us know. And you also will, on the survey, get the opportunity, if you guys do want to schedule a complimentary consultation for yourself. Once again, it is complimentary. There is no obligation to do anything. Do request that on the survey. And if we aren't able to answer your questions, once again, on the survey, make sure that you list the questions on that survey so that way when we do have the complimentary consultation, we can make sure we get those questions addressed for you in your particular situation. So let's go over course objectives. So we're going to talk about why do I need estate planning documents, benefits of a revocable living trust, required minimum distributions, different types of tax strategies, and then also passing assets to beneficiaries. So the course objective number one, why do I need estate planning documents? So let's first talk about some of the ramifications if you don't have an estate plan. So there are financial costs that you will incur, or you won't incur them, but your estate will incur them. So without an estate plan, settling your affairs can be expensive due to government's probate court process. You have filing fees. In the state of California, it's about $395. State of Florida, $400. State of Idaho, anywhere is between $223 to $300. You have legal notice fees, potential bond fees, personal representative fees, attorney fees, and then appraisal fees. So as you can see, if you don't have an estate plan, these are the type of fees that your estate will incur, which will then lessen your estate and give less to your heirs. Let's talk about some of the personal costs. So the cost may be more than just financial. Family conflicts, disputes over money, land, or personal items, to name a few, often arise from the process of settling an estate through probate. I can't tell you guys how many times I've dealt with clients over my 15 years of being in this business that have inherited an estate and they're at odds with their siblings, with their cousins, with their whoever, because they can't come to an agreement on what percentage of the estate that they're entitled to, so on and so forth, which has caused many problems when it comes to that. A recent survey found that 44% of all estate disputes involve siblings. Then out of that 44%, 30% of those said their family members stopped talking to each other entirely as a result of that dispute. So I'm sure many of you on this call today, or maybe not many, but some of you on this call today have probably inherited an estate, which prompted you to potentially start looking at estate planning for yourself because you were like, hey, listen, I don't want this to happen to my kids or my loved ones when they inherit my estate. And that process is very nasty, and that's another reason why you would want to potentially get your estate planning document set up so that your loved ones do not have to go through that process. Loss of time, 6 months to a year. I mean, I've seen it a few years where estates cannot get settled because people didn't have it set up correctly. I've seen it even in spouse situations where the spouse, the married couple did not have their assets set up and designated correctly, and then the surviving spouse could not touch her deceased spouse assets, for months and even years, which has, caused a lot of issues financially. Loss of privacy. there's certain financial advisors, attorneys, CPAs, all different types of people in the mortgage industry that build their practice off of preying on people that are in the probate court process, because it's not a it's not a private matter. Once you do go to probate, it is a public process, so you lose all your privacy. People that build their practices on preying on people that are in that process they can see what the estate has, they can see all the assets, they market to that. So when you talk about reasons to have an estate plan, that's one of the biggest reasons, in my opinion, is so that way you don't have to put your heirs in a position where they may potentially be preyed on by people that build their practice off of, finding those people at their weakest moments, right? There was a recent article in 2019 by Forbes that said, despite their priorities, nearly 50% of Americans over the age of 55 still do not have a simple will. 67% of Americans have no estate plan. This was an article by CNBC in 2022. And then in Investopedia, if you want your assets and your loved ones protected when you can no longer do it, you will need an estate plan. Without an estate plan, your heirs could face big tax burdens, and the court could designate how your assets are divided and even who gets to raise your children. I mean, it sounds scary, but it's true. I mean, if you don't have these things listed, the court is going to make decisions on, where your assets go, who raise your children, if you have minors, if you pass away, so on and so forth. So why don't more people have an estate plan? Intimidating process, attorney cost. A lot of people are like, well, it costs too much. I don't have the money to do it. I don't know how to get started. I don't know where to begin. It's an uncomfortable topic. When you're at the family gathering, or if you're at the gathering, with your friends in the neighborhood, estate planning is typically not what you're talking about, right? You're talking about maybe the new car you want to purchase, maybe the upgrade you're doing in your home, your lawn, whatever the case may be. You're not typically talking about estate planning and passing away. It's too complicated. Who do I leave my assets to? Who's the beneficiary? What percent should I leave? Procrastination, that's probably the biggest thing out of all these. I mean, myself included, I have certain things in my life I procrastinate on. You guys do, we all do, right? We all have things that we procrastinate on. And, estate planning is typically one of those things where people will say, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next year, I'll do it next month. And then you look up and you're getting ready to retire and you still don't have an estate plan. So at the end of the day, you do have a choice, right? You can designate and have an estate plan, and you can make it specific to your situation, or you can adhere to whatever the government's plan is. So your plan, once again, you set it up the way you want, where your assets go, who gets what percent, so on and so forth. Or you just select the government's plan, which is going to probate court, which we've talked about extensively. So a few questions are going to arise throughout that process. Decisions are going to have to be made as far as who gets your assets. Once again, what percentage, whether it's your kids, your nieces, nephews, grandchildren, your best friend, your partner, whoever it may be, right? Healthcare, if you're incapacitated, who's going to be your power of attorney. If you're terminally ill, comatose state, how you want your end of life care handled, things like that. Your family's future. And then how much of your estate you want to be paid to courts and lawyers, right? So by not having a plan, once again, that's going to eat away at your estate. So let's talk a little bit about the government's plan, which is probate. So you have your assets. Your assets go to probate court, and then for probate courts, they go to your heirs. The court's going to decide who receives your assets. Your family's privacy is lost. Once again, probate is a public process. your privacy will be lost. And your family can wait months, it can wait years before receiving assets. That's what happens when you go to probate court. Typical probate costs, they range anywhere between 1% to 8%, depending upon the state and what you have going on. So if you look at about a $300,000 estate, you're looking anywhere from $3,000 to $24,000 in probate costs. State of California, unfortunately, for any of you that are from California or live in California, things typically cost a lot more there. So they range from that 8% and up range. And under some state laws, attorneys and personal representatives are entitled to reasonable compensation. Typical probate, anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000. So now let's talk about some of the benefits that will happen from avoiding probate. So you're going to save money, right? You're not going to have to incur all those different probate court fees and whatnot that we've discussed. You're going to save time. It's a fast, efficient process. The money is going to go from your estate directly to your heirs. You don't have to wait months and potentially years. From a stress standpoint, your heirs aren't going to be stressed out as far as trying to figure out with their siblings, with their nieces, nephews, their loved ones, wherever it may be, who's going to get what, what percent, so on and so forth. Less paperwork. Once again, it's a seamless process. And maybe most importantly, once again, your family's privacy is protected because it's a private process anytime you do have an estate plan that is set up correctly now. I mean, you can have an estate plan, but you have to make sure you set it up correctly. So now that we talked about why you need an estate plan, now let's transition into, which is the centerpiece of any estate plan, is a living trust. Let's talk about some of the benefits that are included inside a revocable living trust. So some of the benefits of a revocable living trust, once again, if it is set up correctly, you can avoid probate, which is going to save money, save time. It's generally considered more difficult to attack in court because it is, documented. It is set up in this revocable living trust contract, which is a contract. It provides privacy. So your living trust is not going to be public upon your death. So it's going to provide that privacy where, people that build practices off preying off people that are in probate, they're not going to be able to attack your estate because it will be a private matter. A living trust eliminates probate court. So you got your assets. They're going to go to that revocable living trust. Once again, as long as that's set up correctly. And then from that revocable living trust, it's going to go directly to your heirs. As I mentioned before, the living trust is a contract. It does the work of probate court without the court and makes matters easier for your family. So if you do really want to get this set up correctly, this is definitely what you're going to want to explore for your family. Make sure it is the right thing because once again, it's going to ensure that as long as it's set up correctly, that whatever you have going on, your assets get passed to your heirs in the most efficient manner. You decide, not the court. You decide who receives your hard-earned assets, when they receive them, at what age, how they receive them over time in a lump sum, who makes decisions if you're incapacitated, who manages assets for minors. So if you do have minors, who is going to manage those assets for your minors? Guardianship for minors. So if you do have minors, once again, you can set up guardianship. If you do have disabled children, you can do a special needs trust. Then that way, if your special needs children do receive, benefits from the government, you can set it up where they don't get a lump sum. So that way that their benefits from the government don't get taken away. Because if they do get a lump sum, then they'll have too much income, which will take away from the government benefits. So you can set up that special needs trust. Let's go through some terms now of a revocable living trust. So we have the grantor, which is typically you. It's going to be you anytime you set up a revocable living trust. So it says the person who creates the revocable living trust and decides what property to include and who the beneficiaries will be. The trustee, while you're living as well, is typically yourself. So it's the person or company. You can elect the company as well if you want, who manages the living trust. Successor trustee manages the trust after you are gone or if you become incapacitated. So you also can elect a successor trustee. So if you're gone, that successor trustee is going to administer that trust for you. In a married couple, typically the surviving spouse is going to be the successor trustee. Then you can list a successor trustee after that surviving spouse as well to help administer that trust. And then you have the beneficiaries. That's obviously, pretty straightforward, right? These are the people that you're going to list who's going to receive the proceeds of your assets inside your trust. Now, transitioning into required minimum distributions. This is confusing for a lot of folks. And we're going to, obviously dive deep here. So just from a definition standpoint, a required minimum distribution, or RMD, you'll hear that term a lot, RMD. That means your required minimum distribution. It's a specific amount of money you must withdraw from a tax-deferred retirement account each year after hitting a certain age. And they've changed the ages on these, and we'll cover this as well. But it's any amount that you're required to take out from any type of tax-deferred account. So this is the updated uniform lifetime table. So due to the Secure Act, your required minimum distribution age used to be 70 and a half. Now it's been pushed to 72. And now, and I'll show you in a second here, it's been pushed to 73 and 75 based on what year that you're born. But you'll see here in this table, you'll see the age, you'll see your distribution period, and I'll explain that to you in a second as well. But this is the uniform lifetime updated table. So you'll see here, if you were born June 30th, 1949 or earlier, the required minimum distribution age used to be 70 and a half. Due to the first Secure Act that was passed in 2020, that bumped up the required minimum distribution age to 72. And this was for people that were born July 1st, 1949 through and including December 31st, 1950. Now, for most of you that are on this call today are probably going to fall on this 73 range here for your required minimum distribution. So that's January 1st, 1951 through and including December 31st, 1959. So let's just say, for an example, you hit 73 this year, then your required minimum distribution will have to be taken April 15th at the April 15th of that following year. So April 15th of December 2024, as an example. And then for folks that are born, as you'll see at the bottom here, January 1st, 1960 or later, your required minimum distribution age is going to be age 75. So that's when you'll be required to start taking your minimum distributions on any tax deferred accounts. So how do RMDs work? So let's say you reach age 73. Now you are required to take your minimum distribution. So let's just say, as an example here, as you can see, let's say you have a balance of 500,000 in your account December 31st of the previous year. Whatever your balance is, December 31st that previous year, that next year, that's going to be the amount that you are required to take. So let's say that amount is 500,000. So you would take that 500,000, you would divide it into your distribution period. So let's say that's 26.5. So the required amount that you are going to be able to take, or you're supposed to take, will be $18,867.92. And if you don't take that amount, you will be hit with a tax penalty. Now, I'll cover that in a second here. Actually, while we're on that, let me just go over it now. So let's say, for example, just for simple math purposes that your required minimum distribution is $20,000 in a given year. And let's say, for example, that for whatever reason, because either A, your financial advisor doesn't notify you, B, you're just oblivious to it or don't pay attention to it, whatever the case may be, if you don't take your required minimum distribution, you're going to get a big fat tax bill from the IRS of about $10,000 that following. So if you don't take out that $20,000, they're going to hit you with a 50% tax penalty, and you'll be required to pay the IRS now because you didn't satisfy your RMD of about $10,000. And I can't tell you guys how many times over the years that I have had personally clients from other financial advisors have come to my firm and said, hey, listen, I got this tax bill, not sure what it's for. You know, we look through it and I'm like, well, you didn't take out your required minimum distributions from the previous year. And then shortly after that, they fired their financial advisor because they weren't, either A, their financial advisor didn't know that they were supposed to do that. They really weren't up on this. And or B, you know, the client just was oblivious to it. Maybe they were managing their own assets. They didn't have a financial advisor. So this is something that's extremely important. And you want to make sure that you're on top of this each and every single year. So that way you don't get hit with a significant tax bill from the IRS. So now let's talk about what issues do forced distributions, such as required minimum distributions, cause for your retirement. So how do RMDs affect taxes? It could increase your annual income, potentially placing you into a higher tax bracket. Withdrawals from IRAs cause your Social Security benefits to become taxable. So let's say, for example, if your Social Security was not taxable, because Social Security, the taxation on Social Security is basically determined by what's called the provisional income formula. And I'm not going to get into all that, but it's based on like what income that you make outside of Social Security is going to determine how much of your Social Security is taxed. So like, for example, if you're being forced to take required minimum distributions, let's say that your Social Security was not taxed, then that could force your Social Security to be taxed and or force a higher percentage of your Social Security amount to be taxed. If you do not withdraw, the IRS taxes the amount not withdrawn at a staggering 50%. So that's what I was just talking about there. If you don't take out your required minimum distribution, you're going to be taxed 50% of whatever you don't take out. Now let's show you some examples, and these numbers that you see here aren't indicative of what the tax brackets are and levels and stuff. It's just to show you guys some examples. Let's just say, for example, you're working today, you're making a good income, and let's say you fall in this 24% tax bracket with W-2 income, okay? And then let's say you retire and you're receiving a pension, an annuity, whatever the case may be, and you're receiving Social Security, and then your tax bracket gets in this 12% range here, okay? And then let's just say at 72, you're required to take some minimum distributions, and that minimum distribution that you're required to take now affects the taxation on your Social Security. Now it's taxing a higher amount of whatever you're receiving from Social Security, which now bumps you back up to that 24% tax bracket. And then at 74, once again, now maybe your RMDs are increasing because your account's growing, and then your distribution period is increasing as well. And let's say now a higher amount of your Social Security is being taxed, and your RMDs are increasing, so now you're staying in this 24% bracket, right? So we call this what's called bracket bumping. So these are things when it comes to financial planning, using tax strategies, really knowing RMDs in and out. These are things that you're going to want to avoid, is potentially getting bumped up into a higher tax bracket in the future by not, paying attention to your RMDs, even though you're maybe, 62. Now you're like, hey, listen, I don't need to worry about that because that's later on in life. It's no, you want to pay attention to that stuff now. So later on in life, if it is possible and it makes sense to reduce your required minimum distributions, you start, planning and making adjustments in your, financial planning picture now. which is a great segue. So now let's talk about some tax strategies. So as many of you know, with the Trump administration, they passed what's called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and that actually expires at the end of 2025. So come 2026, this Tax Cuts and Jobs Act will expire. So what's going to happen is tax rates are going to revert back to what they were in 2017. That's if they don't make any changes in Congress. And tax rates back in 2017 were higher than what they are today. Now, what's going to happen with that is you're going to see higher income tax rates. You're going to see higher capital gains and higher dividend tax rates and lower estate tax exemptions. So essentially, just from a tax standpoint, it's not going to look better than what it is today. Now, this chart here shows you the history of marginal tax rates, and it's kind of crazy if you think about it. So if you look at the beginning of this chart, 1913, the top marginal tax rate at that point was 7%. And then in World War I, you saw that increase to almost about 80%. And then it went down during the Depression, and then back up in and around that World War II range. It crept up to close to 94%. And then over time, crept back down. And then during the Reagan administration, went from 69% all the way down to the low or the high 20s. That's why Reagan was liked so much. And then it increased after that point. It's pretty much stayed steady from that point. Now, if you talk to any tax expert, any economic analyst, any financial analyst that's out there, most people predict that tax rates are going to increase. They're not going to stay where they're at now. Because if you look at tax rates now, tax rates, just looking at it, once again, from a historical perspective, they're pretty low for the most part, right? People think, well, my taxes are high. But if you look at it historically, marginal tax rates, used to be in the 80s and 90s, so with that being said, these are things that you want to think about when it comes to, planning for your retirement. What type of retirement vehicles do you contribute to, so on and so forth, things like that. So this shows you the tax rates, the way they currently are right now in 2023. So you got the 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, and 37% tax brackets. Now we're looking at married filing joint. Now taxes are progressive. So what that means is that the income up to 22,000 is taxed at 10%. The difference in this, 22,000 to 89,000, that difference is taxed at 12%. The difference in this bracket is taxed at 22. And let's say you make 250. The difference between 250 and 190, so that's what, 60,000, give or take. That 60,000 is only taxed at 24%. So if you make 250,000 as a married couple filing joint, your effective tax rate may be 20%. So that's that's something that you want to know, because prior to me getting into this industry, I thought if I was in a 24% tax bracket, all my money got taxed at 24%. That's not exactly how that works. The current standard deduction for a married couple filing joint is $27,700. Now, once again, once the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act ends, the tax rates are going to revert back to what they were in 2017. So as you can see here, the 10% bracket is going to stay the same. 12 is going to go to 15. 22 is going to go to 25. 24 is going to go to 28. 32 is going to go to 33. 35 will stay the same, and then the top marginal tax bracket is going to be 39.6%. And this is, once again, if no changes are made in Congress. Now, Congress can make some changes and actually increase those rates, but once again, as it currently stands, that's the way it's going to look. Now, what's not accurate on this, and I can tell you that because I know it, is that these bracket numbers are going to be different because these aren't adjusted with inflation, so these numbers are going to be higher. But once again, this is just for illustrative purposes. The standard deduction is going to drop drastically to $12,700. Now the personal exemption will come back, but as you guys can see, I mean, if you fall in a 24% bracket, now you're like, well, I'm going to defer my taxes. It may make sense for you to actually start paying tax on that money now, because you'll be in a 28% bracket in a couple of years from now. So a tax strategy that's commonly implemented is what's called Roth conversions. So Roth or not to Roth, that is the question, right? Should I do a Roth conversion? Should I not do a Roth conversion? Roth conversions are hot topics right now because the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, taxes are historically low, tax rates are set to increase, all that stuff. So, a lot of our clients we're looking at to see, if it makes sense for Roth conversion. It's something that we look at with our clients on a year-to-year basis, because sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. And it's a thing that you look at on a year-to-year basis. You just don't make a decision and say, okay, I'm going to convert all my money now and then that's it. It's something that we look at with our CPA, with our clients, to make sure it makes sense for them. So things you're going to want to take into consideration is what's your marginal tax rate, what your life expectancy is. Can I afford to pay taxes on the amount converted from on the amount that's converted from a non-IRA fund? So what that means is, let's say that you're converting 50,000 from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, okay? Let's just say the taxes on that are 10,000. If you have 10,000, let's say just sitting around in a money market, in some type of liquid account, savings account, checking account, whatever the case may be, it would make more sense to pay the taxes from that account rather than paying the tax from that IRA and then converting only 40,000 to that Roth IRA, because if you're able to convert the whole 50, then that way that Roth account will start building from a higher amount, right? So if you're able to pay the taxes from an outside account, that's just going to be a lot better for you. So that way you don't reduce the amount that's in your overall IRA. Another thing to take into consideration is, have I started my required minimum distributions yet? So these are all things that we like to take into consideration, and other things as well with our clients to make sure that Roth conversions make sense, because it's not a one size fits all. Just because your coworker did it or because your coworker didn't do it doesn't mean that you should do it, so on and so forth. Should I convert? If you decide to convert to a traditional, or if you decide to convert a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, whatever funds you convert will be taxed at your marginal tax rate. So once again, that's something you want to take into consideration. Keep in mind, though, that your marginal tax rate when you retire most likely will be lower than your children's brackets when they inherit this particular IRA. Because once again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would imagine that my tax rate is going to be higher than what my kids is, so on and so forth, just from the state of the economy that we're at right now and where we see things going. If you have other money to pay that tax bill, which we talked about, then all your IRA funds will continue to grow. If you are under age 59 and a half, you can't use the money in your traditional IRA without incurring a penalty, in addition to paying the conversion taxes. So typically, and this is kind of like a general rule for everyone, if you are under age 59 and a half, it's typically not going to make sense to do a Roth conversion, because that IRA is still going to be subject to the 10% tax penalty, like all IRAs are if you withdraw funds from that IRA prior to 59 and a half. So that's like a general rule of thumb for everyone. And then, as you'll see highlighted at the bottom there, don't use IRA money to pay conversion on taxes. Once again, not everyone has the ability to do that, but if you do have the ability to do that, that's going to be a really good benefit for you, so you don't have to reduce the amount that's in that IRA. So this is an example here of Dave and Sarah. So in 2017, they were in a 28% tax bracket. In 2023, they were in a 22% tax bracket due to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And then in 2026, they got bumped back up to that 28% tax bracket, okay? So Dave and Sarah's example here, let's just, once again, look at this here. So let's say Dave and Sarah converted 100,000 of an IRA to a Roth IRA. If we're using the 2017 rules, it's going to cost them about 33,000. I mean, not 33, 33%, which would equate to 33,000 in taxes. And once again, this is just federal now. This is not any state. This is just federal. So state's going to be, on average, if you do have state tax, it's going to be on average an additional 5%. So it'd be about 33,000 for them to convert that IRA to a Roth IRA. Now in the 2023 rules, in the 2024 rules, and the 2025 rules, that cost of a conversion is about 24%, which would equate to about 24,000 in taxes. So it's a $9,000 tax difference, and or saving them more than 25% of taxes. So once again, this is just one example, but these are things that you want to look at, because once again, now we're in this very important window before taxes increase. We're looking at things like this may make some sense, because you could potentially save yourself, as you'll see in this example, maybe 25% in taxes. So converting assets to tax-free accounts. So you got the IRA, then you go to a tax-free bucket. There's a couple things or a couple ways that you can do that. We focused a lot on Roth here. Other vehicles that you can use that can potentially be tax-free as well. So in closing here, now I'm going to talk about passing assets to beneficiaries. A lot of strategies with that as well. So the first version of the Secure Act was effective in January of 2022. Secure Act 2.0 became effective in December of 2022. So I'm going to talk about one of the biggest changes that was made with the Secure Act. Many of you probably have heard of it, but if you haven't, this will be great information for you. So one of the biggest things that happened with the Secure Act that was initially passed, once again in 2020, was the elimination of the stretch IRA. So what does that mean? So prior to the Secure Act in 2020, if you had an IRA and let's say you passed away, and let's say let's just say your kids inherited that IRA, what they were able to do with that IRA was essentially take distributions from it based on their life expectancy. So that way they can stretch out the taxation on that IRA if they didn't need it per se. Now, with the Secure Act 2.0, what happened is that now your children inherit that IRA. They basically have a 10-year window where they have to take the distributions from that IRA and pay tax on it. So let's just give you an example. Let's say you have $1 million in an IRA that gets passed to your kids. They inherit that IRA. So essentially, and let's just say they're taking withdrawals. This is without growth now, just assuming no growth, on equal distributions for a 10-year period. So essentially, they'd have to take out $100,000 per year over a 10-year period. And let's just say, for example, your children inherit that IRA when they're in the prime of their working career. And then they add $100,000 per year onto their current income. What do you think that's going to do to their tax liability, right? It's obviously going to increase their taxable income. So these are things that you want to consider, you want to be aware of, so that way if there's ways to plan around it and potentially eliminate that and or reduce that you do it while you're able to do that. Now there are eligible designated beneficiaries that would not have to have that 10-year rule applied to them. So like a surviving spouse, if a surviving spouse does receive her deceased spouse IRA, she can stretch that IRA out for her life expectancy or his life expectancy, whatever the case may be. Children under age majority. So once the child attains age majority, then that 10-year rule does apply. And that age of majority just depends upon the state. most states it's 18, some may be 21. So if they hit 18 or 21, then that 10-year rule does apply. Any disabled or chronically ill beneficiaries, they're eligible to stretch out that IRA, or any other person not more than 10 years younger than the participant owner. So let's say that your cousin inherits your IRA and they're 5 years younger than you, then they can stretch that IRA out for their life expectancy. But once the eligible designated beneficiary passes away, whoever their beneficiary is going to be, then that 10-year rule is going to apply. You can't extend it again to their beneficiary as well. So the goal essentially is to pass the money to beneficiaries tax-free if possible. That would be the ultimate goal, right? We are able to provide a tax analysis needed to see if Roth conversions does make sense for you. It's definitely something that you'd want to take advantage of. Now let's talk about another tool outside of a Roth IRA that you can utilize to pass assets to your beneficiary in a tax-free manner, okay? And a lot of you are going to be like, oh man, life insurance, what are you talking about, right? Life insurance is a financial vehicle that can be used in a plethora of ways. And when we talk about just passing assets, you're paying premiums into it. So I'll just give you an example. Let's say, you have an IRA account, or if you just have funds that are going to be taxable that you don't necessarily need, okay? You can utilize a life insurance to potentially, or utilize that money, I should say, to fund the life insurance so that way when you pass, your kids receive, or whoever your loved ones are, they receive that life insurance, which is a tax-free benefit, instead of receiving that taxable asset. So we use this a lot for legacy planning. We'll typically use some type of permanent life insurance, or, we're not using term insurance when it comes to that. So, you're going to pay premiums into it. The money's going to accumulate, and then that money is going to pass tax-free to your beneficiaries. They're not having to pay tax on that money, which is awesome. And a lot of times, like if you have an IRA, there's all different types of creative things that you can do to fund it, and not necessarily use all the IRA funds. So then your kids get a tax-free benefit with the life insurance, and there still is some money left over in that IRA if it's structured properly. So this is a tool that we use for passing assets, besides like a Roth IRA that's tax-free. Another way that life insurance can be utilized as a financial planning tool and a tax-free method for retirement is, let's say that you're early in your career and you're looking for another way to invest for retirement. You can overfund a permanent life insurance. The money's going to accumulate. And then in retirement, to supplement your Social Security, to supplement your FERS annuity, your SERS annuity, whether you have a separate employer pension, whether you have a private annuity, you can take tax-free loans from this life insurance to help supplement that income. And since you are taking it as a loan, the IRS sees that as tax-free because it is a loan. And then if you pass away, whatever loans that you didn't pay back just get deducted from your death benefits. That's another creative strategy that we'll use for a lot of people for retirement planning and/or passing assets to beneficiaries, which a lot of people don't know, because most people look at life insurance and they're like, well, I don't need life insurance because they only look at it as like an income replacement or paying off debt. But there's so many other things that you can utilize this for to help plan for retirement, passing assets, so on and so forth. So in closing here, as the picture says, you want to get your ducks in a row, right? So you want to make sure you're getting full use of your tax bracket, right? If you're in a 12% bracket, 22%, 24%, you want to make sure that you're getting full use of that. And sitting down with a financial advisor, CPA, whoever you may work with, and making sure that you're getting full use of that. You want to make sure if long-term care is a need, that you have some type of hedge against long-term care protection. There's so many creative strategies out here nowadays that we implement, and that these insurance companies, these products that they've developed that are included in other products, these hybrid products that can help you, hedge against that particular need if that's something that is a concern for you. Having a personalized Roth conversion strategy, once again, if that's going to make sense for you, making sure that you are aware of that. Do you have a probate avoidance plan, right? Making sure that your assets avoid probate. Sometimes there's some things that you can do even without setting up a trust to make sure that you avoid probate. Making sure that you get a will and trust for you if you already have one set up. Is it, have you moved? Have you acquired new assets? Are the people that are listed, in your trust, your powers of attorney, your beneficiaries, are these people still the people that you want to, be involved in your estate plan, right? Do you have a written retirement income plan? Do you know, when you're going to retire? Do you know how much income you're going to receive? Do you know what that net income is, right? Do you know how long that money is going to last you? Things like that. Do you have a tax-efficient asset withdrawal strategy in retirement, right? Do I pull from this account? Do I pull from that account? What makes most sense at the correct point in time? Are these things that you have, figured out and written down? If you don't, obviously these are things that you're going to want to consider. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, at the end of this survey, you will receive a survey. Once again, we do appreciate that you do fill out the survey. Let us know how we did. Was the information helpful? Once again, because the only way we can make these things better is if we get feedback. So your feedback is valuable. We do look at every single survey that does come back. And once again, you will have the opportunity to have a complimentary consultation with one of the vetted MyFed University network representatives. So if you do want to have that opportunity, just make sure that you do select the complimentary consultation. And let's see how we're doing on time here. Looks like we have a couple minutes. So I'm going to see if there are any questions in this chat box here. My voice, as you can probably hear, is going a little hoarse here after doing all this talking. So let me see here. Okay, looks like we do have quite a bit of questions. Oh man, I can't, there's so many. All right, I'm just going to start. I need to find a new government health insurance policy that applies to 2 states, California and Idaho. Okay. So yeah, that's more of a personalized question. The costs that are incurred via probate can be incurred with the will also. The answer to that is yes. If you do just have a simple will set up, a will also go through the probate court process. A will is just simply a document that you're telling the probate judge what you want to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will happen. The probate judge is going to have the ultimate say. So yes, to that question, those costs will also be incurred with a simple will. Is there a benefit to putting all my assets into a trust? Will the trust continue after my death? It really just depends. I mean, some assets will benefit by being put into the trust. Some assets won't. Once you do pass away, yes, that trust will continue. Now, it won't continue in a sense that you can continually put assets in it, but it'll make sure that your heirs get your assets through that trust. let's see. With the living trust in place, does the family still need to retain an attorney to carry out the asset distribution in the event of death of a trustee? Let me make sure I understand this question right. So with living trust in place, does the family still need to retain an attorney to, in the event death of a trustee? Yeah, so in a situation like that, I mean, the family wouldn't need to retain an attorney. But what you can do in a lot of these cases is you can also have like a contingent successor trustee in case that successor trustee that you do have does pass away in this situation. But in an event, you know, both of them does pass, then yeah, at some point you would have to get some type of legal team involved because yeah, they would have to make sure that that would have to be administered. Looks like we still have a few minutes here. I'm going to see if we can answer a few more here. Can you withdraw more than the RMD when you reach that age? The answer to that is yes. You can definitely withdraw more than that. There's no limit. I mean, you can withdraw all of it. You just have to make sure you're being smart from a tax standpoint. RMD example, 500K, is that like FERS or TSP? So in that example I gave with the 500K, that just refers to any type of tax deferred account. Your TSP could be a tax deferred account if you are contributing to that traditional TSP. So yes. Okay, so this is a good one here. So why is the Social Security increased? So like Social Security, the maximum amount that your Social Security can be taxed is 85% of your benefit. So for simple math, if your Social Security benefit's $1,000 a month, the maximum amount of that $1,000 that can be taxed is $850. But that $850 is taxed at whatever your marginal tax bracket is, whether it's 22%, 25, 28, whatever the case may be. So the more income that you make outside of Social Security, the more your Social Security can be taxed. That example I was showing you is that since you're taking more required minimum distributions, it's increasing the amount of your Social Security that's taxed up to that potentially 85% range there. And that, once again, that was just an example. You know, everyone's situation is different, but it looks like we are coming up on time here. Hey guys, I definitely appreciate all you guys hopping on. Once again, fill out the survey. We can do a complimentary consultation for you, and we will catch you guys on the next call. We also are going to be doing another live one like this, same presentation tonight. So if you have coworkers that weren't able to get on, it will be running live again tonight at 6 p.m. Thank you.